Have you ever wondered why soldiers of the past acted so strangely? Imagine two walls of people in bright uniforms slowly marching toward each other across an open field. They stop within a stone's throw and begin taking turns shooting at each other point blank. No one lies down, no one hides behind trees, and no one tries to crawl. To a modern person accustomed to SWAT tactics or trench warfare, this looks bizarre. However, behind this lay a strategy refined over years. Linear tactics were the only effective way to fight 200 years ago. If you had tried to fight like a modern soldier in the mid-18th century, your army would have been wiped out in 10 minutes. Today, we'll break down the primary reasons why our ancestors chose this formation and why it was the peak of efficiency on the battlefield.
The main culprit behind linear formation was the smoothbore musket. Unlike modern rifles, the inside of its barrel lacked rifling to spin the bullet for stable flight. The bullet in such a gun was always significantly smaller than the barrel's diameter. This was intentional, allowing a soldier to quickly hammer it down with a ramrod even after the barrel became fouled with soot. When fired, the bullet literally rattled inside the tube, hitting the walls before exiting. Consequently, it flew in a random direction, like a poorly kicked football. Hitting a single person from 100 meters away was nearly impossible. You could aim perfectly, yet the bullet would still fly several meters wide or high. An individual marksman in that era was practically useless. For the musket to become a fearsome weapon, a massive concentration of fire was required. If 500 men fired simultaneously in one direction, they created a literal wall of lead. Each soldier's individual miss was compensated for the sheer volume of the collective volley. The line turned hundreds of inaccurate guns into one giant shotgun. The denser the formation, the higher the probability that the volley would mow down the enemy unit. It was pure statistics. Quantity of shooters translated into the quality of damage dealt.
The second critical reason was smoke. Huge amounts of thick white smoke. The gunpowder of the time was black powder, and after the first volley, the entire battlefield instantly vanished into a fog. Officers had no radios, satellites, or drones to coordinate movements. The only way to manage an army was to see its units with one's own eyes. If soldiers had scattered through bushes and ravines, a commander would have instantly lost all control. In the chaos of battle, scattered infantry would simply flee in terror. The formation allowed the officer to clearly see how many men remained and where they were moving. Bright uniforms, red, blue, green, were also vital for this. Amidst smoke and soot, one needed to know instantly, are those friends or foes approaching the flank? Flags and regimental colors served as navigational beacons and rallying points. Loud drums and fifes weren't for music, they were for transmitting commands over a distance. The drum beat dictated specific actions, when to load, when to fire, and when to charge. The line was the simplest and most reliable geometric shape for maneuvering massive crowds of people. Many ask the question, why couldn't they at least lie on the ground to be harder to hit? The answer is simple. Cavalry. In the 18th and 19th centuries, a rider on a horse was the equivalent of a modern tank. A lone infantryman lying in the grass or hiding behind a tree was completely defenseless against a cavalryman. While a soldier spent 30 seconds reloading his musket, a rider could cover a massive distance. If the formation broke, cavalry would begin slaughtering infantry one by one without resistance. The only thing that could stop a mass of heavy horses charging at you was a solid wall of bayonets. A horse is not a kamikaze. It will never leap chest first into sharp steel pikes, but a bayonet wall only works when it is dense, continuous, and disciplined. Standing shoulder to shoulder, soldiers created a living human fortress. To protect against cavalry, the famous infantry square was used, a hollow square formation. Inside such a square, infantry was practically invulnerable to saber strikes from any side. The moment you decided to show initiative and hide, you became easy prey for the first patrol. A soldier's choice was limited: stand under fire in a line or be trampled by hooves in an open field. We must not forget the crucial human factor under stress. War is terrifying, and the natural reaction of any living being is to run as far as possible. Linear tactics were the perfect tool for suppressing individual fear. Soldiers were trained to act as a single mechanism, making movements completely automatic. Feeling a comrade's elbow provided the necessary confidence to stay put. Discipline in the armies of that time was extremely harsh. Officers and sergeants always stood behind the line, specifically to ensure no one dared retreat without orders. It was often said that a Prussian soldier should fear his corporal's cane more than the enemy's bullet. Linear combat was, first and foremost, a contest of nerves. The winner was the one who stood longest without flinching. The dense formation maintained morale through a sense of collective strength and accountability. Leaving the line meant betraying your comrades and almost certainly facing a court-martial. The process of loading a musket was a science consisting of 12 or more sequential movements. One had to reach for a cartridge, bite the paper, pour powder onto the pan, insert the ball, and draw the ramrod. In the heat of actual combat, a lone individual could easily forget a step and be left with a useless piece of iron. In formation, soldiers did everything in sync, obeying the officer's short, sharp commands. This allowed for the maximum possible rate of fire for the time. Sometimes firing was done by ranks. The first rank would fire while the second rank hurriedly reloaded. This created an effect of continuous fire that simply prevented the enemy from closing into striking distance.
Linear tactics dominated battlefields until the mid-19th century. Its decline was brought about by rapid technical progress. Rifled muskets and the famous mini-A ball appeared, changing the rules of the game forever. The accuracy and range of the average infantryman increased several-fold in just a decade. Where effective fire used to be at 50 meters, a soldier could now reliably kill an enemy from 500 meters. The Crimean War and the American Civil War were the first bloody lessons for conservative generals. Dense columns and lines, which had been a defense for centuries, turned into perfect group targets. Artillery also became much more accurate and rapid firing, tearing through entire battalions with a single lucky shell. Then, the machine gun appeared, finally putting an end to full-height parade marches. During World War I, soldiers finally dug into deep trenches and donned camouflage. The romance of bright uniforms and beautiful lines faded into the past, giving way to small unit tactics and cover. In summary, linear tactics were a triumph of logic and mathematics over the chaos of battle. It perfectly matched the level of technology, communication, and psychology of its time. Napoleon-era soldiers weren't stupider than us. They were simply playing by the harsh rules of their era. They stood at full height because it was their only real chance to survive. The history of warfare is an eternal competition between defense and attack, accuracy and mass. And linear tactics remain one of the most striking, majestic, and tragic chapters in this long story. If you're interested in learning more about how Napoleon cracked these lines with his columns, leave a like and I'll make a video about it. Thanks for watching.